let's continue the Maya basics. And we are going to model a mark together slightly differently than we did yesterday. So first I ask you to go into Google and just search Teema Muki. So we are getting reference picture. And first image what I get is this 2000 pixels x 2000 pixels mark from the side, and I will select this. So I will save this to my desktop and I will rename it as Teema Muki, obviously. Then back in Maya. First, when we are here, we have to open the new scene because some of you probably have already something on your scene. So I go to File, New Scene, don't save, you save if you have something there. And when we are here on the perspective view and we want to bring the reference picture in, I'm pressing the spacebar and then I'm jumping into side X by tapping spacebar again. Next thing to do is that we will find this reference image or image plane icon, which you can find here on the top left corner of your 3D view. It's look like tennis court. So you click this and then you can open the Finder window, where from you have to navigate to desktop folder. And there is Teema Muki. And I will open it. And now I can get the mark here opened. And I have my outliner open here on the left. So I can see that there is image plane 1. If I click it to active, you can see it's active when it's highlighted on blue. And then I'm pressing W, so I get my transformation gizmo active, and I can move it just on top of the x-axis because I want it to be over the grid. The one thing what we didn't do yesterday, we didn't go into the attribute editor. So attribute editor here, what I introduced you today, and my Maya crashes. Let's start this again. If you already have loaded your reference image, please save at this point while I restart my Maya. And then Maya Classic. Just a moment. And outliner open. Okay, I don't wanna open the attribute editor to avoid the crashing again, but you can do basically the same thing here on the channel box. So activate the channel box It's the most right icon under the workspace. And then the alpha gain value here on the image plane shape. If we press, if we put value 0.5 there, we can decrease amount of solidity of our reference image. So now it's semi-transparent, which helps us to see our 3D model when we start to bring geometry in. Next thing what we want to turn on is the modeling toolkit under the workspace, the cube and the hammer. And now we are at the point where we want to start adding geometry to our scene. So I'm pressing down the spacebar and I'm going here to the create section. Under the create section, I'm going to the cylinder and I'm going on top of the small square, which allows me to see the options of my cylinder. Be sure that your axis divisions are 12 here, because we want less geometry, because it's easier to increase later on. So axis division 12 and then press create. And then we get P cylinder 1 here in the outliner. We can rename this P cylinder 1 by double clicking it, and I will rename this mark base like this, and hitting enter I'm applying the new name for the mark. The thing what we don't want to do at this point is starting to modify this on object space. So I come here on my modeling toolkit and select the Vertex Selection. And now I can see that I see the vertex of my cylinder, and I start to modify those. I'm doing the tracking selection, so I'm pressing my mouse left down and tracking all the vertices on the top of the cylinder. And I have my W pressed down, so I have the move tool active, or the transformation tool. And I bring all these points here near the top of the reference image. And then I'm doing the tracking selection here on the bottom of the mark and bringing these points to the level of the bottom of the mark. Next thing what I'm going to do is I do tracking selection and I select all the vertices in my mesh, and I'm pressing R to activate my scaling tool. And now if I'm pressing Ctrl down and then I'm tracking from the green cube, I can scale all the other axes except the Y axis. And now if I jump into perspective view, you can see that I have scaled it quite perfectly to fit to the reference image. So I'll do that again. I have my scaling tool active, I press Ctrl down and then I start to scale Y-axis. If I do this without pressing Ctrl, it scales only on y-axis. But when I press Ctrl down, I scale every other axis except the y. Okay. Then I have to press W, and I have all the vertices selected, and I'm modifying the transformation of my mark so it fits for the reference image. Then I'm doing the tracking selection for the top vertices, and I'm pressing R. And now I want to scale these vertices on every axis. So I'm grabbing the middle one, and now it fits for the reference image. And then I'm doing the same for the lower vertices. So I select all the vertices, scale those, and actually I bring these vertices bit up because I can see that the corners of this mug are round, as well the top corners of the mug are round as well. So I need to do the extrusion soon, but before that I'm pressing the spacebar, and now here on the top view I'm going to change my selection mode to the face, and here in the middle of my cylinder I'm doing the tracking selection to select all these triangles and then press delete. If you are doing wider tracking selection here, you will select something else than the polygons what we want to delete. So in this case do only a small tracking selection so we can select all the triangles like that. Okay. And now we are at the state, if we go to the perspective view, where we can see that, okay, it looks nice, the form is good, but we have to adjust our rotation to face the x-axis here. So same thing what we did yesterday. We come to the Y view, and then I just pressing mouse right down, I'm changing my selection mode to the vertex. I'm selecting all the vertices and pressing E, and then up here where you have this cloth ports, we have this small line where is arrow. If you press that, you can open options where from you can with numbers rotate components on edit mode. You can do exact rotations. So I will show again where to find it. So up here, after the clapboards, this might be open for you, but if it's not open, you can click here and open the field. And then we want to turn our mark on y-axis when all the vertices are selected. Let's try 15 degrees at first. And 15 degrees it is. So all the vertices selected, I come up here, type 15 on the Y field, and then I press enter to apply the transformation. And then it turns my mesh. The common mistake what you might do at this point is that you have your transformation gizmo active, and now if you type 15 here, it will move all the vertices to the point 15 on y-axis. So Command Z, and remember to be sure that you have the rotation gizmo at this point. But now it's looking nice and sharp, and we can pull out or model the handle pretty easily there. Okay, the next challenge is I'm jumping with the spacebar to the side X view. The next challenge for us is to model the round corners. I'm changing to the edge selection here from the multi-component. And now if I double click here the edge to be active, it will select whole edge. After that I'm pressing W, and now it's I'm starting, or actually I have to scale my model a bit before I do that. I go back to the vertex selection. So up here vertex selection, or on top of your mesh, press down, mouse right and select vertex. I scale this a bit on by pressing Ctrl down and then Y axis, so I get a little bit wider so it matches better to the reference image. Maybe I just move it as well with W. Okay, I think now it matches better for our reference image. And then we start the extrusion. So to the multi-component, and I click on mouse left the edge, and now I double click the upper edge, and I'm doing the tricky extrusion. Well, it's not so tricky, but you have to remember that after you have pressed extrude, you have to move the new geometry out from the base. So here on the modeling toolkit you can find the extrude and press extrude, and now I will press W because I don't want to use that extrusion gizmo, so I want to use normal transformations, and I move it here, and after I have moved this I'm pressing R, and then I'm just scaling this down with this middle square like this, only slightly, so it's the I want it to follow this left side of the mark, so that's good. And then again I'm pressing here on the modeling toolkit another extrusion, and again pressing W to get normal transformation gizmo, and again R, maybe even a bit too much, something like that. And now we have done 2 extrusions. I come to the perspective view, because next extrusion I can do actually here on the perspective view. So I'm pressing now extrude, and then I'm pressing W, and I'm pushing this in slightly, and after that I'm pressing R, and I'm scaling that down a bit like this. Okay, looks nice. And after that, I press spacebar to jump on the side X view. And now we are going to use this X-ray options, which you can find from here on top of the uh, your 3D space view. So I'm pressing X-ray icon where two uh, squares are intersecting, and I have my edges selected there. And now I'm just pressing extrude and then pressing W and bringing this down almost near to the bottom, like that. And then pressing R and scaling it on this middle square, like this. And the important thing here is, if you look this side, is that you left space here between these two faces. So that will be the volume of the clay where the mark is formed, like in the real world. Okay, and the next thing what we are doing is that I'm just clicking on mouse's left on empty area to deactivate my selection. And now I'm double clicking here on top of the bottom edge, and then again extrude is pressed and W and moved right away on top of the earlier edge. Then pressing R and scaling this down to make the corner effect. We are not doing so smooth corner here in the bottom, but something similar that we had earlier. And then again another extrusion, pressing W and pressing R. This is going to be so slight that it's almost unnoticeable. Okay, something like that. And now we can actually jump back to the perspective view. And the next thing to do here is to do extrusion, but we don't move that extrusion anywhere, we just scale it. But when we scale it, we are moving it out from the top of earlier edges. So I'm pressing extrude, then I'm pressing R, and then I'm scaling this from the middle cube, like this. Okay, and the next thing what I'm doing is that I jump back to the side view with spacebar, and once more I'm doing the extrusion. I just press extrude button here, press W and bring this up a bit, and then with R scale it down a bit, like this. And I'm jumping in the perspective view again. We could do the breaching already at this point, but today we are actually doing one more extrusion at this point. So I'm pressing extrude, then I'm pressing R, and I'm scaling this from the middle cube to be closer. By scaling these edges to be closer, it's easier to us see which edge should be connected. So, as I said, we are next going to use bridging tool to fill this gap here in our mug. So, I'm selecting this edge and I'm selecting by pressing shift the facing edge here, and then the bridge tool can be found under the extrude. So bridge. When you have selected those two edges, just press bridge, and now you have polygon there. And then these following edges, and I'm going to bridge those as well, and then the next ones and bridge, and then these ones and bridge, and then these and bridge. Okay. And then we have this inner cup. We can actually hide the image plane at this point. So on the outline editor, if you select the image plane and then press H, it hides the component or the object from the 3D scene, and this is very useful so we can see some objects what would be hide it other way. One thing what I want to check before I do the extrusion for the inner mug is that I jump to the side X view, and then by pressing mouse right I select the edge and double click the inner edge of the mug, and then press W and move it a bit up so I can get thickness or the volume for my mug there. And now I actually have selected quite easily from the side view my inner edge. This is something good to remember, that if you don't see something from certain view, you should probably try to find it from the other views than just you are wasting time if you try to just fly there from with your perspective view. Okay, I have that selected, and now I'm actually pressing extrude and pressing R and scaling this one down as well. And the next thing what I'm doing here is that I'm just clicking here on the empty area and pressing W, selecting these facing edges, and then I'm pressing the bridge tool and selecting the next facing edges and pressing bridge, and the next, and the second last edges and bridge, and then the last edges and bridge. Okay, and now we have our mug base ready. I'm just pressing on top of my mesh mouse right button and selecting object mode. As I said earlier, it's easier to add polygons to the mesh than decrease. Now we can see or look our mark on the smooth preview. So if you are pressing number 3, our mark will be smoothed and all the polygons will be divided. And this is now the smooth preview what Maya offers for us. And if we are watching our mark here, we can see that the top corner or the top part is looking nice. There is these things called control loops. So loops what we did here are controlling the transformation nicely, so it keeps it sharp, as well as here in the bottom there is enough these edge loops going around, so it controls and it keeps it nice and sharp. But here in the inner mark you can see that if I now press 1, I get back to the subdivision level 1, which ain't smooth preview. Here it's sharp, but if I press number 3, because it divides the polygons and gives us more geometry, it deforms as well our sharp corners. So the easy fix here is to add 2 control loops here. So we want to add here 1 edge loop going around this and going around this, so we can or we have more control how the Maya will divide our geometry. And the tool where we added these control loops was here under the bridge tool, the multicut tool. So we click on the mouse's left the multicut tool, it becomes active, you can see it's highlighted now. And now the thing is, before you click anything with the multicut tool, press Ctrl down and come on top of the edge, and you will see that it forms the edge loop. And I want to put 1 edge loop here and press mouse's left and apply it, and another edge loop here on the bottom of the mark and put it there. And then I press Q because my cursor is currently looking like knife, it's not normal cursor, so I have to deactivate my tool or the multicut tool by pressing Q, and now I have normal cursor. And if I press number 3 now, I get the smooth preview on, and then by pressing mouse right the object mode, and now I can see that I have nice and sharp corner there. And at this point I will save my scene, file, save scene, and this will be Teema Muki.